out of the red corner, an undefeated mixed martial artist holding a perfect professional record.
So for this next one, let's address what I think like continues to be the bane of not just fighters within the UFC that keep getting like butt fucked and raped without their consent. This is also for like every degenerate gambler across the land. We know many of them. We are degenerate gamblers ourselves, I think, in some instances. And that's basically like fixing terrible judging. To smash my point on this home, my plan was actually to go through the entire year and make like a record of every dog shit decision we've had this year. But to be honest, I really can't be fucked, mate. There's a lot of work. So I'm just gonna like...
That's fair.
But it's fair, yeah. It would have been... I sat down to go through every card and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is going to take forever. But fortunately, if you look at the last numbered card we had, there are some really good examples of that one, and it kind of highlights the kind of issues that we're facing here. So we'll cast our minds back a little bit. Firstly, you remember the Josh Kalibao and Ricardo Ramos fight?
Yep.
I think it was in 305. So this guy outlands Ricardo Ramos 70-27 in significant strikes throughout the fight, and he loses a split. Like, I'm not sure how they managed to justify that one. That was pretty criminal to me. Then we had Rosenstruik, who basically dog walked Tai Tuivasa. Rest in peace to that guy. Beats the absolute brakes out of him for 15 minutes. He outstrikes him again, 3 significant strikes to 1. There's no takedown, and somehow one judge managed to give Tuivasa a unanimous decision. So there was that one. Now maybe I'm alone in this one, but I you know the Hooker and Gamrot fight? I was a little bit dubious about that one, but you know, it was like, I thought Gamrot clearly won 2 rounds to 1, but that one I'm less, you know, dubious about. It was a close fight, and Hooker did have the hometown advantage. So, and also as well, I bet on Gamrot that night, so maybe I had a little bit of shit in my eyes as well.
Of course.
If you look at that card just in isolation, there were 6 decisions on the night, and a third of them were outright unexplainable in terms of how the judges came to that conclusion. And you can argue that one of them was a little bit questionable. So for the mentally challenged out there, that's half the decisions that were borderline dodgy, if not outright criminal. Personally, I'm fucking sick of it. So the question is, to frame it after again a very long-winded backdrop there, how would you fix this judging problem? Like, what would you do?
So I have a few ideas with the judging, and I'll just lay them out one after another. So firstly, I don't think the judges should sit cage side. I think they should be in the back watching on a monitor without any commentary at all. And the reason why is just like you, like we've been to UFC events, right? Looking through the cage and being close to the cage is probably the worst vantage point you can possibly have. Then on top of it, whereas when you're watching on a monitor, you have unobstructed views. Typically, you have all these different angles. So I think a lot of that would help. I also think instead of 3 judges, we should go to 5. And I also think that we should go to open scoring. And the reason why I think that would be good is because it would add another element to the fight. Because I mean, fighters in the fight, let's say after the first round, a guy knows, all right, I'm down, I lost that round. I have to put my foot on the gas in round number 2. Or like we've watched fights and people's cornerman tell them like, oh, you're up 2 rounds to 1, but in actuality it's 1-1, or they're even down 2 rounds. And they fight a specific way when it's clearly not what they need to do. So, and I know with that, there comes another side, whereas, well, if a person knows they're up 2 rounds, they're just gonna dance around for the 3rd round. But at least in that, the other person knows they have to get a finish. And it's very clear. Another element I like, but I don't think it should matter, is I do like what PFL does, where they let the crowd get a vote and who they thought won the fight, and they put that on the screen. I think that would be good, but I'm not saying they would use that to determine who wins the fight. I just think it would just be another element to where everybody can see it. And also, I think the judges, all of their decisions need to get studied and reviewed, and they need to have a fact checker and like see how their cards like line up, like if they see any type of patterns, and you know, you can put it in models, and then that way, like if we're seeing any type of patterns that don't line up, we can go to this judge and like, hey, like, what are you seeing here? Like, what is mattering to you? And then on top of it, the fighters in the corner people can know like, hey, these are our judges. these judges likes this guy likes more grappling, this guy likes damage, this guy likes more control time, and it brings a lot more things out in the open, whereas everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat like, oh, I don't know how this decision is, how this is going. And just like you said, To Ufc did not win a round, wasn't even close in that Rosenstrike fight, and there's no way in the world he should get a 30-27 in that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's got to the point now, yeah, where when you watch an entire fight, you can see somebody beat the brakes off another person, but then as soon as it goes to the judges, you're not sure if your guy's gonna, there's always that hesitancy. It's like, are they gonna, even though you've seen the guy beat the shit out of somebody else, you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen here. And it feels like it's getting worse and worse in that regard. There's no feeling of, oh, they've definitely won it. Even if your eyes are telling you, there's nothing to suggest, based on what we know of the scoring criteria, there's no way that your guy could possibly have lost that fight. And yet we find this happening more and more. So I kind of thought about things in a very similar way to you. I kind of broke it down into like 3 very simple steps. The first thing was obviously addressing, like, maybe I'm making assumptions here. I assume that judges go through some kind of training process where it's explained to them, this is what the scoring criteria is, this is what's weighted, and then it's kind of that there's a training process involved where they clearly understand what takes more precedence over something else. But judging on what we've seen, it's very hard to justify that that's what's going on. So the first thing I would do is make sure that at obviously the training level, they're making sure that these judges are regularly being trained to understand what the scoring criteria is and being able to demonstrate in front of their, I don't know, the judging commission or whatever it is, to be able to demonstrate to them out of competition how they're scoring things and how it's supposed to work so that it becomes a lot more consistent. So the first thing I would do is that. I really love your suggestion of putting them into separate rooms, which is another thing that I considered, because keeping them away from the crowd and the home influence, the thing you mentioned about having angles and all that kind of stuff. And what really baffles me about this aspect of it is the commentators will always highlight to us, oh, bear in mind the judges don't have access to the stats. And I'm thinking, why not? Why don't they have access to the stats? Like, why can't they be in a room separate from everyone else where they have multiple angles to view the fight, but they also get the stat counts as they come in, so they can very clearly see, this is how many body strikes, this is how many, and then the AI comes up with a score to determine how effective they've been within that round based on the metrics that they've included that are based on the scoring criteria. Because that's how the smart cage works. They input the data and say, this is what's favored as more effective, and then the AI works out what's more effective. And I think they should have access to that as well. Because again, it's going to help to determine if their eye view of it is correct. So I like the fact that you've got the crowd input, you've got the AI input, you've got the ability to see the stats and the different camera angles. If they have access to all this information, hopefully it should start clearing things up. Now, the final thing you mentioned, and you kind of touched upon this a little bit as well, not only would I have like an audit of what they've done within the fights in terms of how they've broken it down, I would also want them to be accountable to like explain their decisions once they've made them. So if there's a decision that's a little bit dubious, I'm not saying they should come out onto the camera and say, look, this is why I scored it this way, this is why I scored it that way, because obviously the judges, people are very passionate about their fighters, and I've talked about this previously in a video with Jax. I don't want to see judges get targeted in their personal life for making a bad decision. Like, you don't want people who've lost money or their favorite fighter turning up at this guy's house and doing God knows what to this guy. But what stops them from maybe producing a statement after the fact, a written statement saying, this is why I scored it this way, and justifying why they've made that decision. So not only do you get, as you said before, it's like you're educating the fighters to show them, okay, this is how the judge has seen it, but also if the judge has then given certain reasons for why they've done it, you can then turn around and say, all right, well, fair enough, you can understand why he's come to that conclusion, and you accept it and you move on. Or if it's completely wrong, you get the opportunity to re-educate that judge and say, look, this isn't how you should be scoring it, and then to realign their education. Or if they can't understand it, get rid of them from the sport altogether. So those to me are kind of the 3 steps that I would take to try and eradicate like really terrible judging decisions. That's how I go about it.
So one you said that I really liked was the AI. And the reason why is because Dana White just came out, I think like yesterday after Contender Series, saying that AI is going to be doing the rankings. So if AI can do the rankings, like at what point can like we start like allowing the AI to watch fights, take in all this data, and like I guess we can start like seeing how it starts to model itself. And then with anything with artificial intelligence, the more time you give it, the more information you give you give it, it gets even better over time.
We're not even saying like let the AI judge the fights, but it can be like another barometer that could help the judges to quantify their decisions.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like, you know, just another metric, you know, like at least somebody like me, like I like numbers, I like statistics, I like those things. And one more thing for me to look at, I wouldn't have a problem with.
Yeah, I think, and that's the one thing about the PFL that I think the PFL is a shocking organization, like terrible I've been to a PFL event, so I can make, the whole purpose of me going to live events this year was to obviously do direct comparisons between how they all operate. But the one aspect of what they do that I love is I love that smart cage idea. I love the fact that a casual fan can see the live stats as they're happening. Someone lands a head kick, the head kick appears. And then the AI score is being adjusted. So it's a simple, because it's an impartial thing of, we've inputted these rules based on what the scoring criteria are, and all the AI is judging impartially what is happening within the fight, or who's more effective in the fight, based on the parameters that you've given us. And it's impartial. Whereas, like, I know that judges get a lot of shit, but like, it's one of those things where we've been to fights live, and you can see how difficult it can be to judge a fight live because of the crowd, because of the cage, because of the noise, because of the fact that you can't see everything. Even though they do have monitors and stuff like that, they have to make decisions very quickly as well. So it's a case of bang, in the moment, they have to decide who's won a round, and then they have to quickly move on. They basically got a minute to kind of sort through that, which is a lot of pressure. So I know that judges get a lot of shit, but having been in that situation before, and if you, and I remember when Jackson and his wife did when they did like a watch along of like fights they previously watched, and then they judged them individually, and their scorecards, they picked the same winner, but their scorecards were very different. And then they were turning to each other and going, this is actually kind of fucking hard, isn't it? Like, we've got access to all this stuff, so it is a very tough job. I feel like they're just going, oh, well, judging is going to be bad, and then they're just leaving it. Like, nothing's being done to fix it. And it's, as you said as well, man, the reason why it has to be is because not only does bad judging affect, like, I'll give you an example. If you were somebody who bet on Jairzinho Rosenstrike to win by unanimous decision, which he clearly did, you would have lost money that night. But also there's the fact of fighters who have clearly won fights. Li Jingliang is an example I can think of off the top of my head, where if you remember that situation, he went into his fight with, he basically got Daniel Rodriguez as a last minute opponent, if you remember, with the whole Hamzat Chimaev switch around.
79.
Yeah, at 279. I can't remember the last time I've seen a card, other than at heavyweight, where in a welterweight bout, you've seen this man weighed in at 170 and this man weighed in at 180, and then they were allowed to fight. And then Li Jingliang beats the absolute piss out of him for 3 rounds, loses a decision, and then he ends up coming in and going down the pecking order, and then he ends up getting a fucking killer like Prado later. Whereas his entire career trajectory could have been different. He comes in there as the 170, the lighter man, wins it. The opportunity is that then he loses his win bonus, bear in mind. So he gets no win bonus. He's down the pecking order. Doesn't get to wear his 6 suit at a press conference as well, which is another thing that was... These robberies are ruining careers.
Absolutely.
And you can find examples of it throughout the entire sport. And that's why, even like, part of me is like, as the degenerate gambler, I want my fair decision for my... You know, I've bet on a fight that's clearly won. I want my money, which I'm not going to get. But the bottom line of it is all jokes aside on that, you win some, you lose some. It's the careers of these fighters that are really in jeopardy here. And lives are being essentially ruined by somebody not being able to look at a very clear thing where somebody's won and taken that away from them. And I think that's the biggest shame of all of it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Guys, let me know if you like the collab and these types of videos in the comments. Also, let me know if there are any other topics you guys would be interested in. Subscribe to the channel, and if you like the content, like the video, and until next time.